No, come on. It's Leah. It's an ongoing comic event. I can't see without my glasses. So big shout out to LunaFest. And if you guys are short filmmakers, you should submit your film to LunaFest because it travels around the country. You get great exposure and hopefully get you to the next level. Up there you saw our amazing sponsors, and the person who is the founding sponsor of this festival is Regina K. Scully, and we could not do this without her, and the Artemis Rising Foundation, which she is the CEO of. Tickets are still available for films and panels today. We have Paul Feig coming this afternoon, director of Ghostbusters, this afternoon at 5 o'clock in conversation with Kate McKinnon from Saturday Night Live. Susie! Everybody wants to say hi. Thank you for sponsoring the panel. And we have a seat for you right here. Sorry, I couldn't wait. No, it's perfect. Perfect timing. So what we're going to do here first is Dr. Stacy Smith over here, the professor of communications at Annenberg, and professor of communications at the Annenberg School for Communication at USC. Stacy is the leading researcher in this area. There's nobody else like her. And what you are going to hear from her today is one stop on the journey that Stacy's been taking to really understand what's going on and the barriers that women filmmakers face. And so these are things that, as you are filmmakers, should absorb and figure out how to overcome. Then we're going to be joined with amazing filmmakers who are going to talk about how they are on their journeys. I'm going to introduce them all now so that we can start and go. Now, Stacy moderated the panel part of it will be Kate Pieper, Dr. Catherine Bieber, who is Stacy's colleague at MDSC, the Media Diversity and Social Change Initiative, I got it in, see, at USC. Twitter follow at MDSC. And she's going to moderate this conversation. She is deeply embedded in this work also and will guide us on our path. So the people who will be joining us are, first, we have Leah Meyerhoff. Her debut feature film, I Believe in Unicorns, premiered in competition at South by Southwest in 2014. And I believe you've been on the road for 2 years since that movie debuted. And she's had short films that screened in over 200 film festivals, won awards, aired on IFC, PBS, Logo, and MTV. Saida Moreno, did I pronounce that correct? I'm sorry if I did it wrong, is a dedicated director and proud native New Yorker. Her short film, White, inspiration for, the sentence is not correct, was funded by ITVS for FutureStates.tv, and it's also on PBS.com, is that correct? It screened at South by Southwest, Tribeca, and Banff Cinema Fest. Rose McGowan, she is best known for being an actress, but she is now a full-time filmmaker, and is that correct? And made a short, Dawn, that was at Sundance, and is now on that journey towards making a career as a director. And Jennifer Sur, she's an award-winning writer-director out of Brooklyn. Yay, Brooklyn. Her short, Sangil, right, about a Korean-American teen's fraught relationship with his widowed father, won the Audience Award for Best Short at the Gen Art Film Festival. So those are the people who are going to be discussing today. They've all made shorts, and one of the things I wanted them to also talk about is the journey from taking your short to a feature film and the issues that they deal with. So without further ado, I am going to turn this over to Dr. Stacy Smith.
No, I've got to leave that there. It's great to be here this morning, and I'm going to take complete credit for the weather. I have that kind of power from Los Angeles. First off, I just want to say it's great to be back. Where'd she go? At Athena. I think this is my third or how many years have we been doing this? Okay, so I've been here 5 years, and I always come to support Melissa and the festival because I think it's extraordinarily important if we think about the journey that female filmmakers go on. Athena is really situated in a unique space because it's attacking one of the biggest problems in the industry, and that's women in leadership, i.e. women in power. And so kudos to Melissa and all the other folks that put on Athena, because until that perception changes, there will be roadblocks that women face as they try to make their way through this career. Secondly, I have to thank Susie, who we were all waiting for and gave a shout out to. Susie is not only a dear friend and colleague, but she supported generously this work. And this work provides an important component to the ecosystem that female filmmakers exist in. And so thank you, Susie, for the financial support to do this investigation, as well as the support of all the folks at Luna and Cliff, et cetera. So what I want to do, I'm going to kind of condense a little bit so we can get to the panel, because I think that's far more interesting sometimes than data. But I want to take you on the journey of why we did this investigation. We had multiple questions that we wanted to ask, and I'll take you through those questions and provide you some answers with an eye towards what are the experiences of women in film and what are the experiences particularly of LunaFest filmmakers. Okay.
So does this work? There we go. Is that the first one? I think maybe it should be here.
There we go. Perfect. Okay. Thanks, Kate. Okay, so the first question that we wanted to address in this investigation is, what is the career pipeline for female filmmakers or female directors in film? We focus on directors specifically. That's the focus of the LunaFest festival. But more importantly, we didn't actually know until this study was done about the career pipeline. Now, you'll hear in the popular press, and I'm excited that this is streaming, that 50% of all students in film school are females. And that's great, but it's also fiction. We have no evidence to support that claim, none whatsoever. And it doesn't matter if 50% of individuals in film schools are female, because what we need to be interested in is production. What percentage of production majors are actually women? That's the important question, because film school is filled with more things than just production. Critical studies, there can be acting in theater, etc. So in our conversations with Susie, we wanted to start to understand short films and how short films are situated in the career pipeline. Why? Because LunaFest is a short film festival specifically targeting women and getting their stories seen and heard. So this was our central question. So what we wanted to do is to answer the question of what percentage of short film directors are women. So we did a festival analysis, and this hadn't been done before, and what we did is we looked at the top 10 festivals worldwide, which you'll see all the names of these prestigious festivals in just a minute. And what we did is we were interested in all the directors that worked across a whole series of sections except experimental films, music videos, installation, transmedia projects, and high school shorts. So outside of those divisions, narrative, documentary, animated, and other were picked up in this particular analysis. And we looked at every short film from 2010 to 2014. Now, just if you're ever going to do this, Rotterdam is extremely difficult to study, and it was one of the short festivals that we actually assessed. Very difficult short film festival to actually analyze. So what did I think I mentioned this already? We had a few exclusions in our investigation, and what did we find? So why don't we bring up the results? Interestingly, females fill almost a third of the directing pipeline in short films. We looked at 3,933 short film directors, and females were roughly a third. Calculates into a ratio of 2.13 to 1, males to females. We were then curious to see if genre was related to the percentage of women working behind the camera as directors across these short films. And so we bifurcated, or we actually siloed the sample into narratives, docs, animation, and other to see if there were differences in who was creating short films. Here's what we found. director gender did in fact vary across the different platforms. The one that's most important is the first set of bar charts on your left. Females are 28% of all narrative short film directors. Not 50, not 40, not 30, 28. Now, if you look to the Directors Guild, 23% of all directors are female in the Directors Guild, and that's directors and directorial teams. What we see here, women are doing better in documentary. Why? It's a more democratized funding model, right? And we're curious if women in film school are being pushed to documentary filmmaking rather than narrative filmmaking. Animation, why don't we go stay there just a second, Kate, doing a little bit better, and then other genres doing a little better as well. So, we were also interested, given that we looked from 2010 to 2014, whether these numbers had changed over time. And so what we did is we wanted to conduct a yearly analysis, and I guess we didn't include that, so I'm going to give you the punchline. Has there been any change over time given all the activism? The answer is no. There has not been a significant increase in the percentage of female directors across these festivals over time. So one thing we were able to do with this investigation, given all of our other work over the last decade, and I can't even believe I can say that we've been working on this 10 years, is we can actually build a model of the career pipeline for female filmmakers, and why the women that you're going to hear from are actually so extraordinary. Because this career pipeline is not a pretty picture, so this is a bit of a depressing moment. If we look to see what happens, if we bring all this information together, we've studied narrative short films with this investigation, independent narrative feature films with the Sundance Institute and Women in Film. If we take some data from the DGA on percentage of female directors directing episodic television, and then we look at top grossing feature films, we can chart how women are actually doing behind the camera. So let's bring the data in. We can see the steep fiscal cliff that faces women as they try to navigate this terrain. If we bring in the next data point, we see that there's actually a 10% drop from short films to independent narrative feature films, 12% to working in television. But then the real reality is the 24% drop from short films to feature films. So it's really important to think about what are the impediments and what are the barriers facing women as they try to navigate this space. Now, we're going to talk about impediments on the panel, so I'm not going to talk about the interviews that we did for this investigation, but I know they'll come up. Kate did all of that work, and she could talk about them on the panel. What I think was important is to think about, and the second question we wanted to answer in the LunaFest investigation was, well, what happens to women? And who are these women that participate at LunaFest? Where did they come from and where did they go? And so one of our central questions was, what impact does a film festival have on the career trajectories of the people participating? So we wanted to answer this question. So we did what we do best at my initiative. We stalked 115 people. Everyone who's participated in LunaFest, we went to their LinkedIn, their IMDb Pro pages, interviews, Facebook, personal communication, blog posts, Vimeo pages, and Twitter. If they said it, posted it, pinned it, or tweeted it, we found it to find out what they're actually doing right now. And it was a very large endeavor, but it's really interesting to see what happened to this class of filmmakers. Who are they? Where did they go? And what are they doing now? So let's take a look at where some of these women, what they did. Why do we need a film school study? The very first point. 72% of the women that went to LunaFest, and the next slide is going to be really important as to why this is an important data point. 72% went to a film school. So they're there, as we all know. They're ready to produce content. They're ready to tell stories. And the question becomes, how do we end up at 4% in the career pipeline? Secondly, 36% of the 115 people that went to LunaFest, 36% screened at least one short film at a top 10 festival worldwide. So this is a class of filmmakers that have gravitas. They're getting their work selected into some of the most prestigious festivals around the world. 72% had won festival awards or other accolades for their work, and 24% had created a feature-length film. And finally, 25% had directed, written, or produced for television. So, in light of the fiscal cliff from 28% narrative films to 4%, the question becomes, what happened to this class of filmmakers? Because they're not working, clearly, in the film industry, given what we know about the statistics. If only 16% of episodic television directors are women and 4% of feature film directors are women, they're not working in film, clearly. So the question becomes, what happened to them? So we looked at the career paths of these LunaFest directors. 25%, only a quarter of the sample, are still working in film and television. That's it, a quarter. Turning to the next, 27% went on to be entrepreneurs and business owners working in their own practice. Another group were employees of other companies, particularly in the animation space or other production resources, and 11% went on to teach at different colleges and whatnot. So I think the real challenge here is that we see women being pushed to other arenas because they cannot support themselves and have a sustainable career as a female filmmaker in particular. So given that LunaFest was specifically focused on female filmmakers, given the fiscal cliff, given all the noise and awareness around this topic, we started to imagine, well, what would happen if these female filmmakers got a chance to actually tell really big stories? What would happen? And would it shift the narrative? Because a lot of times you'll see, well, if you have a woman working behind the camera, what's on screen is different. But the question is, are women being attached to projects that are female-driven in the industry? So you really don't know cause and effect. So we wanted to know if these LunaFest filmmakers, if they created content, would it look different? i.e., would they be the answer to the inclusion crisis that we see right now? Would they change what we see on screen? So our last question was to ask, what's the demographic profile of characters in LunaFest films? Meaning, if you were to give these women a chance, what might their content look like on a large scale? So every year at the Media Diversity and Social Change Initiative, what we do is we analyze content. We put out a yearly report every year. We look at the top 100 films based on domestic box office gross, and we analyze every speaking character. So from the protagonist all the way down to the person that says one word. And we analyze the demographics of those characters, the domesticity of those characters, and the hypersexualization of characters as well. Actually, one of our coders is actually in the room who's done a lot of this work, Sarah Erickson. So what we did is we took the top 100 films and we analyzed the LunaFest films because we wanted to compare. How do female filmmakers compare with the norms we see coming out of Hollywood? Because when you're doing a short film, you get to make your own decisions. You get to tell the story you want to tell. Interestingly, here's what we found. 115 LunaFest short films, 100 top grossing films. If you look at the top grossing films, females are less than a third of all speaking characters. They are only 21% of female leads or co-leads, and in terms of narration, they're only 21%. 50% of the population, 50% of the ticket holders, right at the box office. The LunaFest films, curiously, 63% of the characters are women or girls, 81% feature a female lead or co-lead, and 79% have a narrator that's a female. So putting females behind the camera or giving them agency to make their own choices, the landscape would look very different. And it wouldn't only look different for girls and women. I think one of the most notable findings was the next finding, which was a little bit of a surprise to me. We looked at underrepresented stories and underrepresented characters on screen. Only 27% of the top 100 films, the characters within them, which is about 4,600 a year, only 27% are from underrepresented racial or ethnic groups. Yet we know the population statistic is 37.9%. So they're under-indexing relative to what's going on in the US in terms of the demographic profile. If we look to leads and co-leads, only 17% in the top 100 are from underrepresented racial or ethnic groups. In LunaFest films, 38% of all speaking characters are not white. And 37% of the leads and co-leads are not white. Why is that important? It's proportional representation. And that women are not only advocating as women, but it also affects other inclusion indicators as well, which is extraordinarily important. So I think that this investigation raises more questions, but also addresses some missing gaps in the literature. We now know the career pipeline. The next step is a film school study, because film school involves Title IX. And it becomes an issue of who's getting resources under what context and what type of support early on in their career. We also know that when women are behind the camera, things change. And this is fairly definitive evidence that females tell stories in a very different light when they're given the resources and the opportunity to tell the stories they want to tell. Thank you.
One moment, please. We are just moving on some chairs, and you will meet our panelists.
Great, so we're going to start our panel. So why don't the panelists come forward, including Stacy. Great, and we'll have to share the microphone, so I'll ensure that no one speaks over anyone else. So as Melissa mentioned, I'm Dr. Kate Bieber. I work with Stacy at the MDSC initiative at USC, and it's a joy to be here today and talk to our great panelists. So I'm going to start us off with a kind of broad question that hopefully will allow you all to introduce yourself to our audience. Why short films? So why make a short film? What do you hope to accomplish with it? And where do you think it will take you when you make one? So anybody can start off.
I hope to accomplish making a movie, actually. I didn't set out to make a short film. My movie didn't need to be more than 17 minutes long, and it was a personal exercise for me to do so in that way. So for me, it was like a full 3-act story, just in a condensed period of time. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm Rose McGowan. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. So that was for me. I think it's also important, as our speaker said, that it is about us telling the stories we want to tell, and that's going to be important at any level for us as, I think, artists.
I'm Saida Moreno, and why do I make short films? I make films for whatever funding, however funding I can get, I'm gonna make a film. So I wanna make a feature. You give me money, I'll make a feature. I made White because it was funded by ITVS for futurestates.tv, and it was for a 15-minute short, so.
Yeah. I'm Jennifer. I agree with, in terms of making a short film, I made them because they're stories I wanted to tell, but I also made 2 short films. I made a couple web series. I've done a bunch of different kinds of formats. The short films I made at NYU in the grad film program. When I started NYU, I feel like the story they were telling us was Cary Fukunaga's story, where it was like, oh yeah, you make a short film and then your feature is made by Focus and you go off and get a 3-picture deal and all that. So we all were like, oh, okay, I make a short film that's going to be based on a feature idea, which I did, and then I didn't make that feature, and that's not the feature I'm making now. Then I made another short film kind of based on a feature idea that I was going to make a feature out of, and still not the feature I'm going to do now. But I don't know, we don't have to get too much into it now, but it wasn't, I mean, I've actually never had a short at one of these top 10 film festivals too. A lot of, for me, it's just been pushing forward lots of different types of projects just to get my game to the top that it can be and just sort of show that I can do a lot of things. So yeah. Sir, S-U-H-R.
Hi, I'm Leah Meyerhoff, and it's nice to be back at Athena. I've made a dozen short films over my career, and one feature-length narrative film. And I think similar to what Saida just said, I think we're all filmmakers, we're all storytellers. If I could only be making feature films, I would, but there is those financial barriers. So my last short film was a direct precursor to my feature film. I made a 10-minute short film called Twitch, which you can see on IFC. It was the subject of a reality TV show. It took this really weird path, but through making that short film, which had the same character and the same storyline as my feature film, I was able to raise the financing and put together my team to make my first narrative feature film, which has since been theatrically released, and now I'm on my way in terms of a career as a director. So I think there's a creative reason to make a short film. It's honing your craft, telling stories, keep working, and there's also a real financial reason. They can be calling cards towards getting that first feature made.
Well, let's, you guys maybe want to keep that down there and then. So as we just heard, and as you've all alluded to, women do face significant barriers in terms of moving from shorts to making feature films. So I think it would be great, because we didn't touch on what the research revealed, but we've done a lot of work at the Media Diversity and Social Change Initiative about the barriers that female directors in particular are facing, to illuminate what those might be, how other factors intersect that. So what role does race or ethnicity play in the barriers that people face, especially women? And what are you hearing when you take your films out for financing? What do you come up against? Are there myths that you hear? Are there ideas that get pushed back on? What happens as you take films out to get financed?
Well, the thing for me is I'm in my own kind of weird place in the firmament. I didn't have to do really empiric evidence because I am the evidence, in terms of if I can't get funding for a feature film, that's how stupid it is. There's studies and then there's reality too. And the reality is I know these jerks. I know who these people are. I know every one of their names. I know what they're doing, and it's all of them who should be sitting here on trial, not me. You know what the reality is. I find that the money, I have a lot of access to a lot of different places that other people probably don't have, but at the same time, Trajectory, my movie Dawn, was nominated for Grand Jury Prize at Sundance and qualified for the Oscar. And the amount of press it gained and all of these things, if there had been any man in my shoes, the outcome right now would be completely different. It's absurd. So I can tell you from the ground up, from behind the scenes, and again, I know these people intimately day in and day out. I have worked with them for 15 years. And I say people, but I say men, and it's a deeply embedded misogyny is the problem there, and a deeply brainwashed female society within the industry.
No, it's just the truth. I mean, okay, so I'm a Black, queer, single mom. I didn't grow up with lots of resources. I don't have a trust fund, but if you do, I'm very happy for you. So I'm just putting that out there because that's the framework, right? That's the lens. I'm Puerto Rican, whatever. How dare I, right? But still, I went to NYU, I got a Dean's Fellow, great. I finally made my film White, which was funded by Future States, and on ITVS. When it premiered, it crashed the system. People loved it, even though it was online. At the time, it didn't qualify for festivals, but still it screened it all over the world. And so I was like, I'm gonna get an agent. Agent is the big thing. That's a big one, right? Which we didn't talk about before. So I was like, yes. So I'll go to LA with a feature that I was tagged to direct. and I sat, and you do these pitch meetings, and the things that people said to me were really illuminating and shocking and horrifying. One of them being that, well, you definitely won't get funding because Europeans don't like black people. Seriously, they will sit in front of you and tell you all of these things, and they tell you what they think. This is what they think. So, but I was like, I'll still get an agent, so I didn't get an agent. And, you know, I'm not sitting here, this is not for me complaining, this is just what I've experienced. You know, it's just the facts. But how dare I'm gonna still make movies, right? So I made my short White into a feature. Right now and I'm gonna start doing the whole fundraising thing. But, you know, these are the things that you experience in film. This is just the plain facts. And there are these very simple trajectories that if I were a white man, I would definitely have that I don't have. And we can talk about what that's about, but definitely, like, they're just these little things, like having an agent or having someone who has access say, like, I trust you, I'm gonna give you some money. Do you know? Yeah, so you can continue the conversation.
So yeah, I'm in the middle of financing for my first feature, which hopefully we'll shoot this summer. We'll see. I have no wood to knock on. But yeah, I mean, the script, I got the All Access grant through Tribeca Film Institute, which is amazing. I don't know if John was maybe going to be here, but and then we also did the Film Independent Producing Lab, and my producer went there, and both of them are amazing organizations, so great. They hook you up with a lot of meetings with production companies, sales agents, whatever, and so we were told, my story is about two Asian American sisters who go on the road trip to find their birth mother. To be perfectly honest, the first version of it was, I didn't think about the race, I just tried to wrote it because I was thinking that it would be really difficult to finance a film with two Asian American leads. I've looked at the comps, they often don't make money and all that stuff too. But then, you know, got to a point where I was in the rewriting process and I was like, if I'm not gonna do it, then who's gonna do it? So I did, and I've changed the roles. But then when I went to these markets, you know, there's a lot of talk about how you can't get any financing, they're not, you know, and one of my stars, I just attached her as a woman from Fresh Off the Boat, Constance Wu, and, you know, and I was talking to her then at that point when I was doing these labs, and people were like, oh, she's not big enough, and maybe, you know, she's not translating to money. The people who are so far supporting it are just like private investors, Asian Americans. An Asian American woman is our first investor, who just has a problematic relationship with her sister and wants to invest in a storyline about that, which is amazing. But yeah, I mean, being told that, you know, these are people who are here to go to these programs to, you know, encourage, but a lot of the time it's they don't actually come up with solutions. They say they want to read the script, but maybe they don't come back and actually do anything after that, or they just don't give you an answer. I mean, having Asian American leads was a big part of them saying that it wasn't going to sell, probably, and my movie's like a dramedy, like, so it wouldn't necessarily do well in Europe because they, first of all, character-wise, subject-wise, maybe genre-wise, it wasn't that kind of thing, and then it also, maybe in Asia, you can't, you know, it's a big market in Asia, like, would they want to watch Asian American actresses when they have their own Asian actresses that are famous? So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I don't know what's gonna happen. Obviously, doing comps, you're like, there's an exception to every single rule that they tell you, but certainly they want to play it really safe, and so.
Yeah. I think the biggest challenges that women directors face are access to financing. I think there is a pervasive myth that films about women don't make money, that a male audience and a female audience will go see a film, any comic book, superhero, any movie with white guys in it, a general audience will see, but a film that has a female protagonist, only women will see. It becomes a chick flick. And when you start talking about foreign sales, it's even worse. So I think this is pervasive, and in my personal case, my feature film, I Believe in Unicorns, has a female protagonist, 16-year-old, imaginative, dreamy young girl. And I was doing those Hollywood rounds, I was taking those studio meetings, looking for financing, and was literally told on multiple occasions, if you'll rewrite this story to be about a young boy, we can finance this film. And I obviously didn't listen to that, because that's not the story I was telling, that's not why I want to be a filmmaker. The whole point is we need to change these ratios. But I will say it made it a longer journey for me to find the financing for my feature. It took a longer time. I made a feature at a lower budget than I wanted to. I did it on my terms, my way. But I think you see that a lot with women directors. You'll see a lot more women in documentary or making lower budget feature films because they don't have the access to financing that our male counterparts have. And they aren't given those same opportunities. So the three of us all went to NYU Graduate Film School, which anecdotally at least felt 50-50. I'm really curious to see your studies on film school. I didn't feel those barriers until I got out of film school. It was in the film festival world. You know, my feature was one of 2 directed by women in competition at South by Southwest, out of 10 films, 10 filmmakers. I traveled for a year on the festival circuit, and time again, I'm the only woman in the room, or one of 2, one of 3. So I think a young white male director will make a successful short film right out of film school, and studios come knocking at his door, and he's offered those opportunities. Whereas women directors, directors of color, they have to create their own opportunities. And so I'd like to shift the conversation a little bit towards solutions. Something that all of us here are part of is a community called Film Fatales, which is a network of women directors that started 3 years ago here in New York with a meeting of 6 women in my living room, and has since grown exponentially to have thousands of women in dozens of cities around the world. And what we do is we get together every month in small groups of 20 directors in each other's living rooms. We sit in a big circle and we talk about our projects, and whoever's hosting the meeting that month brings up a discussion topic that she wants to investigate in depth relating to her own career and her work. And in this way, women directors are helping other women directors. We're sharing knowledge, we're sharing resources, we're hiring each other, we're crewing for each other, we're recommending each other for jobs. We're starting in a grassroots level to change those dynamics. And I think that's what it takes. I think we can't keep waiting. These numbers aren't changing. They've been the same for decades. It's horribly depressing. Instead of just giving up and saying, all right, I'm not gonna be a director, what can we do? We can make our films. We can just keep going and create our own opportunities.
Right, I think that's really important. Another aspect of this particular study on short films, we asked women what opportunities are out there and what opportunities do you need in order to either get to features, to support your short film work, to have a sustainable career. And they gave us quite a few examples. Networking and mentorship were important. Encouragement, like what you're talking about with Film Fatales, is really important, and funding. So I think the question I want to put to the rest of the panel, and also Stacey, I'll ask you to chime in on something as well, is what has worked for you? What have been the supportive entities that have helped push you to where you are, that you've taken advantage of, that you've would recommend to other people? And in the midst of this kind of talk about opportunities, I want to talk about the word empowerment, which is something we were talking about just before, and why it's kind of a misnomer for what women need, because women are empowered. You're all very empowered. You're all making your films. You have careers. You're doing what you do. So how do we change the conversation from being about empowering women to taking down or creating solutions to these barriers that female directors face?
Well, you know, someone touched lightly on the agency part of it, and it's a lot bigger than you think. That is actually ground zero for this systemic problem. And in order for that to change, there has to be a way of 86ing these people who are largely useless in the first place. I've worked on sets for over 57,000 hours. That's a conservative estimate. I know filmmaking backwards, forwards, sideways, and I've seen women directors on my sets, like, you know, I did this one TV show, and they cut the crew, and the other 2 actresses cut the legs out from this director. I watched it happen. There is a real problem with anger. When I directed my short film, one of my solutions was I only used my entire crew, DP, everybody came from the commercial music video world, which is a lot more integrated, because frankly on my set I don't have time for your shit. Also, one of the things you can do, I was talking to somebody at Sundance, this woman who works in industrial light and magic, and she's like, well, you know, the woman that Kathleen Kennedy said no women directors called about shooting Star Wars. Their agents didn't call. I'm like, they don't have agents. That's the problem. The agents are these white frat dudes that will not sign them. That is the reality. And somehow this, basically what's going on with all the digital platforms, and what's great about all of that, is that we are now going to be able to usurp their power. They're a largely anachronistic and dying model. And the more you can get around them through reaching out to people on Twitter or in other various ways to the stars of your thing. I mean, I'm in talks with someone to be in my movie, my feature, and it's just through instant messaging kind of thing. I'm just going around these people because they're not usually brainiacs and they're slow, and I'm not feeling it, basically. So I don't see the point. The way I do it is just railroad these idiots out of my way because I don't care. Like, your ephemeral rules don't exist in my world. So I don't actually play by any of their rules. I don't think they exist, and I have seen their rules over and over and over and been a victim of them. And the way, you know, women are treated behind the scenes in Hollywood is how we're treated behind the screen, is how we're treated on screen, is how we're treated in the world. And there's a deep, deep, deep problem that needs to be rectified. And again, if statistics have not changed since 1946, it's time to go punk, because being nice is not working.
So your question was about what does work in transitioning from a short to a feature. I think a couple of things. I think there are resources out there for finding financing. If you can't get the millions and millions for a studio film, there are a lot of other resources, and here in New York. So I also got a grant from Tribeca All Access, which is a fantastic program to know about. It's targeted grants specifically for women and people of color. They're $15,000 grants, and then you're eligible for another $15,000 upon completion of the labs, and alumni grants for the rest of your career. So look them up, Tribeca Film Institute. I also was supported by San Francisco Film Society, which is another fantastic organization. Sundance, I think everyone knows, the Sundance Labs. And then IFP is another great one, which is here in New York, in Brooklyn. I went through 3 of their lab programs and also received a grant from the Adrienne Shelley Foundation, which gives targeted grants to women directors. So there are some grants. That said, they're not necessarily enough to cobble together into a feature budget. So you do still need that private equity. I found my money through a fantastic producer, Heather Ray, who I met through Sundance, who had connections for her previous film. She went back to those investors, and then from a lot of women who said, I want to see this story told. And I found my audience by bypassing all of those closed doors of, okay, people won't go see a film about a woman. I just created my own network on social media with like 100,000 fans on Facebook. I found those young women who I knew wanted to see this movie, and they're the ones who have been my biggest supporters. So I think we are in a really exciting time with the digital platforms where filmmakers can directly reach their audience and bypass a lot of those gatekeepers who have been shutting us out. That said, I still think it's worthwhile going through those gates and making them wider. I don't think we can just create our own system. I think to have a sustainable career, to make more than one low-budget feature film, you do need access to financing the same as the guys have. Did you want to chime in too, Stacey?
Yeah. What's the question, Kate, at this point?
Let's talk about solutions and the misnomer of empowerment, because I know you have some thoughts.
Yeah, I just think it's a problematic word. We were talking about it before. None of these women are disempowered. It's the wrong word. The system is discriminatory and exclusionary, period. Right? And an interesting, Rose, I have a bit of a counter to your point, but I completely agree with you. It's interesting. We've been studying the Sundance Institute for years now, and the women coming out of the Sundance Institute in the competition program over the last 13 years, and Kate, correct me if I'm wrong here, Kate's a co-author on the same project, they have the same proportional representation as the male directors. Absolutely. They have agents, just like the guys do, but they're not serving them, right? Why are they not getting attached? Why are they not part of a bundle? Why? So they do get representation, but they're put up, in my own opinion, to the end of the list, right? Or more problematically, and this is why Athena is important. What happens in Hollywood is really clear. If you have a female lead, then maybe they'll consider having a female director. Maybe. If you have a person of color in the lead, then maybe they'll think about having a person of color in the direct. That's exclusionary. That's discriminatory, because you're saying that someone's ability to helm a picture is attached to the lead character in the film. And until that problem, that solution, the discriminatory language that they use, right? Like you were talking about, what sells in Asia, what sells in India, what sells in Europe, until the hegemonic language, the discriminatory language is changed and those biases are called out, this is the barrier, right? So the cash flow can't come in until that language is held accountable. And I don't know where the EOC is at. Somebody else might be able to comment, but that is one potential solution, that there is now a federal body investigating the practices surrounding Hollywood and hiring, and it involves not just executives, but agents as well.
I mean, and you look at Sweden as well. I mean, yeah, it's not just exclusionary, it's illegal. I mean, there is incredible gender bias in this industry, and I think we've known it for years and years and years. It's fantastic the research you're doing, because it really solidifies and gives us something to point to and say, this isn't just one filmmaker complaining how hard it was for her, and it's like, oh, spoiled grapes. It's, no, this is a pervasive, this is systematic.
One more thing. Sorry to cut you off. I do that too much. I'm sorry. I apologize. But here's the thing that really is, I think, interesting. We were curious about what sells several years ago at the MDSC initiative. And so we actually tested these market forces. And if you had a female lead, we put it against production cost, advertising cost, widest point of release, seasonality, director power, star power, over a dozen production, distribution, exhibition factors. And what we found is that the lead character doesn't really matter to making money in the United States. It's production, it's advertising, and it's distribution density. You put it in 4,000 theaters, the unicorns, they'll come, right? They're there. So, but what happened internationally was fascinating, and it speaks to the foreign sales issue. If you had a female lead, you actually made more money. This was for 2007. We were way ahead of the game on Hunger Games and Divergent, and had they only consulted with us, right, we would be much wealthier and there would be more revenue, right? But I think that speaks to this mythologizing issue and the risk aversion. They blame it on international sales, and where is that data? How are they price pointing? How are these comps? These comps are based like just on real estate. Market flow. And guess what? The bubble does burst. So I think we're at a place now where there's actually finances domestically and internationally to challenge the status quo.
Sure. I'm thinking about this question about, can you say it one more time? Just because I'm like, because I'm really like, what are the options? Leah said all of it. I mean, there's what, 5 organizations? Fine, okay. So I'm thinking about every short film I've made, and it's always somebody took they said, I believe in you, right? And that's really what we're talking about, is that if we are more represented, then we're gonna make choices and give other people more access. I mean, it's all about access, right? So with, this short film that was on HBO for 2 years that I made for $700, like, it was Christy Zaya, who worked at NYU, and she's like, you can come in this class, and it made like $25,000. So like, whatever, if, it's all about someone saying, I think you can do this. And with White, Kareem Ahmed at ITVS was like, this is a crazy story you've been trying to make for a decade, but we're gonna give you the money to do it, And so I'm not sure what that model is going to look like for the future. I did get a grant from San Francisco Film Society to write it, which is rare to get any money or funding to write in this society. It's just, we don't have a socialist society in that way. So that's exciting. And so we'll see, but I also, I think our resources are our people. Really, we have to look at who is around us. Like what civic things you do, who your family is, if you go to church or don't go to church, whatever that is. So much of our access to finances and to support, because as a filmmaker, you actually need support. You can go crazy. You need to find ways in which you can balance your life, like your community. So whatever that is for you, keep connected to your people, so much, and so, yeah, in my model, in my head, I finished White, it's fantastic, I have my lead that I want, which is Rosario Dawson, and then, and it should be awesome, it's genre, and they all say, like, genre makes money, it's sci-fi, naturalistic, should be easy, right? And then I'm gonna package it for Game Changer, and they're gonna give me the money. That's what I'm saying is gonna happen, right? I don't know what that model is going to look like, but again, you have to have a vision, right? You have to dream, because that's what I have right now.
Yeah, I feel, just to piggyback on the community part and also add to it, like, I feel like, with my film, which still in the financing stage, right? Like the first thing that I think I'm benefiting from is this commerce. If I'm benefiting, I might not get the money at all, but I feel like I'm benefiting in some ways the fact that we have a lot of conversation about diversity right now. And God, I'm like always, I'm so cynical about it because obviously we've had it in the 90s and like whatever. And like, I'm lucky to have a woman who's on the only Asian, well now there's 2 or 3 Asian American sitcoms, but it was the first sort of in 20 years, right? And I'm lucky that she's a very vocal person because she asked us if she wanted to use her press PR people to put out a press release for us. And so she did, which was great. And so they put in Variety, and then it got picked up in like NBC News, BuzzFeed, Jezebel, whatever, a bunch of other places. I had friends who don't know anything about film who had heard about my movie because I think there's this conversation about diversity right now. And so I'm going to ride whatever train I can have, but I'm also knowing that it might go away. And even though like it went to all these places, the only people who really, it's not like I got people offering to me money afterwards or agents reaching out or anything like that. I mean, I had one agent reach out who I had talked to way in the past, but like besides that, it wasn't like I got a lot of press from people who were the gatekeepers or they wanted to do anything. But I went to LA right afterwards, which just happened to be lucky timing, and I met with a lot of Asian American execs, and that was like, it was so huge, and my actress hooked me up with a lot of them too that she's met in the community, and so that's so important, I guess, is having collaborators and actually looking to your community, because a lot of people are going to say that they care, and they're like, especially I'm in another sort of diversity incubator for TV stuff on the side, and I sat in the room with all these execs who are saying that they're really looking for diversity and whatever, but nobody really came up to me after I pitched. Like I left and it was like, okay, like they just sat for 2 hours on these panels and said that they're doing a lot of stuff to care, but they were presented with 11 artists and they didn't talk to probably most of us afterwards. So I think that you use whatever angles you can in keeping the conversation going, and you try to like shame people into really caring, and then you also have to remember you have to use the people that you have always been there, because they're probably the people who will actually show up. So
community is a big part of this solution. And that was the idea behind forming a community of women directors, Film Fatales. As I was making my first feature, I did what a lot of us do. I called up other women directors who come before me and said, can I take you out for coffee? Can I get some advice? And Kimberly Pierce, Allison Anders became an executive producer on my film. I mean, these women were incredibly generous, but there aren't enough of them. That generation, Catherine Bigelow can't mentor us all. And so the idea behind Film Fatales is it's a real peer mentoring community. It's women sharing their knowledge, sharing their resources, and lifting each other up and hiring each other. And I think that's a big part of the solution, because there's a real danger in the way that the system is built to be highly competitive. And there's a danger in tokenism. One woman gets in that room and then she doesn't want to rock the boat, understandably so. She had to fight and claw tooth and nail to get that opportunity. She doesn't feel like there's space for her to reach out and bring another woman in if she's the only one in the room. You need 3, you need 4, you need a quorum of women in that room to really affect change. And Film Fatales is starting to shift that conversation to say, let's collaborate, let's help each other. A win for one of us is really a win for all of us. And we're seeing, Jill Soloway only hiring women directors now on Transparent. Shonda Rhimes. You're seeing women starting to say, and you're seeing actresses, which I think is a really important part of this conversation as well. I actually have a terrific agent, and she sends me out for things, but some of my best opportunities have come from other women in Film Fatales who've said, I was pitched for this film, it's not right for me, maybe it's right for you. And I was just in these incredible talks with a film that Natalie Portman is starring in, playing Ruth Bader Ginsburg, called On the Basis of Sex. And Natalie insisted on working with a women director, which is the only reason I was in that room, And I think the more that actors and actresses who have the power to say, we want to see representation on screen that actually reflects the diversity of the world we live in, and we want to see that diversity behind the camera as well, they have the power to really shift this conversation. You see Meryl Streep, Reese Witherspoon, Jessica Chastain just started her own company. I think that's going to be part of the solution as well.
And just as a little plug, that film, On the Basis of Sex, was an Athena list film, I think. If Melissa's here,
it's
she
a
can
fantastic
confirm
script.
that. Yeah. So that's another opportunity. We have time for 1.5 questions, I think. So, and then we'll have to, break. So is there someone in the audience? I think there's someone right here. I don't know if you need a microphone.
So thank you guys for what you do. I just loved watching film, and I love coming to festivals like this and really hearing about what women are doing behind the scenes to really rock the boat. One of the questions that I have, thinking about the fact we still only have one woman who's won an Academy Award for Best Director, thinking about Oscar So White and Will Smith, and I'm forgetting the female director's name, Kathleen, I'm forgetting her last name, all of a sudden. But what do you think about these folks who have made it, respectively, and what are they doing, sort of, because there's been criticism of Will Smith and saying, oh, well, now you're sort of concerned because the movie that you were in didn't get nominated, and oh, by the way, your production company pretty much has all mostly white people on the payroll. So what do you guys say to that, and your thoughts to that, as for those who going to that comment about tokenism?
Hi, sorry. I actually know the people at Overbrook, which is his company, and it is heavily male, but seems predominantly African-American males from the inside out. I'm doing something with them, actually. But I agree with you, the Oscar So White thing, it's the whole part of it is embarrassing, and it's embarrassing to say oftentimes I'm from Hollywood and from that system in any way. One of the things I've really noticed is women are helping women a lot more. I think it's getting the message to them. I think the agents, you might have seen that on the Sundance side, but once they're away from that, no. And they're very far down the list, and they won't most likely recommend the person when they're calling to pitch. But other things, it is going to change, and I think there are ways to go through it and around it, but go around it first. And go around and create your own reality of what you want to do, and just keep working, keep plugging away at it, do what you need to do, and then shame them and embarrass them, but also these people, I know for a fact the Warner Brothers women's diversity thing is a little horseshit. It's a lie. The top person of their women's initiative, and it's because of the EEOC is investigating them, tried to get financing for this woman, and they're like, oh, no, it's just a shell. This stuff is real at these studios. It's really much darker than you know. But we can do this. I really believe in us, and I believe in the next class and the class before me and all of it. And I think there's no age limit on creativity, so keep going.
I just wanted to say that what Leah commented on was actually really important, because as actors are vocal, male or female, because I think the males are actually really important on this one. If they simply, and I've written about this in the Hollywood Reporter and other venues with Kate, if they simply amended their contracts with an equity writer and said, for every film that I'm in development on, there will be proportional representation on screen, and if I can't do it because of the historical issues or whatever, then behind the camera, or they can start with behind the camera. It'll be proportionate too, because if it's in the contract, it's a legal issue, and it can happen. And since they make so many asks anyway, all you would need is one of two people, because the way Hollywood works, and Rose can confirm this, it's about favored nations. So whoever has the most prestigious contract, everyone follows suit. So it's getting that language contractually into the DNA of how we create stories. Is it antithetical to creativity? One could argue, but I think the words are show business. So why not use the lever legally to create change if it has to make money? So play their own game, but be on the offense, not the defense.
Unless there's more. Another question, or are we done? Okay, we're done. So thank you all for coming.